Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a book about the power of mindset and how it affects one's financial success. Kiyosaki's story shows that one's financial success is not determined by how much money one earns, but rather by how one thinks about money. He encourages readers to think like rich people and to learn about money so they can make it work for them. The book is a valuable resource for anyone who wants to achieve financial freedom and build wealth. Chapter 1. The author narrates his life story as a young boy who was raised by two influential fathers, one rich and the other poor. He highlights the contrasting points of view of both fathers on the subject of money, and how he had to choose for himself which point of view to follow. The rich dad, despite not being rich yet, was a successful entrepreneur who encouraged Kiyosaki to think about money differently than the poor dad, who worked hard all his life but never achieved financial freedom. Kiyosaki explains that the subject of money is not taught in schools, and most people learn about money from their parents. However, poor parents often have a poor financial mindset, which they pass on to their children. Therefore, if parents do not teach their children about money, the children will grow up financially illiterate and struggle financially. Kiyosaki argues that teaching children about money should not be left to parents alone, as many of them are already poor. Schools should also teach financial skills alongside professional and scholastic skills. One of the key differences between the two dads was the way they approached money. The poor dad always said, "I can't afford it," while the rich dad encouraged Kiyosaki to ask, "How can I afford it?" The rich dad believed that by automatically saying, "I can't afford it," one's brain stops working, and one becomes mentally lazy. On the other hand, asking, "How can I afford it?" forces one to think and look for solutions to the problem. Kiyosaki learned from both his rich and poor dads, but he realized that the rich dad's mindset and approach to money were more valuable. The rich dad believed in taking risks, investing in assets, and making money work for you. He also believed in financial education, and he taught Kiyosaki valuable lessons about money that he would later use to become a successful entrepreneur and investor. This book contains 6 valuable lessons that will guide you and your children towards a path of wealth and financial success. Lesson number 1: The rich don't work for money. Lesson number 2: Why teach financial literacy? Lesson number 3: Mind your own business lesson #. For the history of taxes and the power of corporations lesson. Number 5: The rich invent money lesson. Number 6: Work to learn, don't work for money. Chapter 2. The rich don't work for money, money works for them. Most people work long hours to earn salaries and spend their earnings on buying things they think will make them happy or save it in a conservative manner. While this provides stability, it does not make one rich or financially independent. The lesson here is that the rich do not become wealthy merely by earning high salaries. Instead, they become rich by owning assets that generate income. Kiyosaki suggests that people should aim to have money that makes more money, such that they do not have to work anymore. This is the key to financial independence. To explain this concept, Kiyosaki uses cash flow diagrams that show how income statements and balance sheets relate to each other. The top box of the diagram represents the income statement, which measures the amount of income earned in a period and the expenses incurred. The bottom box represents the balance sheet, which shows the assets and liabilities of an individual. Assets generate income, while liabilities spend money over time. Wealthy individuals use their income to buy assets that generate more income, while minimizing their expenses and reducing their spending on liabilities. People who don't become rich spend their income on expenses or liabilities that increase their expenses but do not generate any income. Thus, the aim should be to focus on the acquisition of assets that generate income. Kiyosaki argues that one's profession is how they draw a salary, while their business is how their money makes more money independently of them. He uses McDonald's as an example of a company that is not in the hamburger business, but rather in the real estate business. While the profession is selling hamburger franchises, the business is accumulating income-producing real estate. This shows that one's profession and business can be different. To achieve financial independence, Kiyosaki suggests 3 basic steps. Firstly, one needs to figure out how much money they need per year to survive. Secondly, one needs to figure out how much in assets they need to generate a return that exceeds the first number after taxes and expenses. Lastly, one needs to acquire assets that return that amount. Even if the goal is not financial independence, these principles are still relevant. It is important to focus on acquiring assets that generate income and minimizing expenses to get the best return on one's money. The lesson is that the rich do not work for money, but instead, money works for them. Chapter 3. Why teach financial literacy? Financial literacy is essential for building wealth and keeping it. It requires understanding how money works, being smart about the way in which you use your money, and acquiring assets instead of liabilities. In this chapter, Robert Kiyosaki focuses on the importance of financial literacy. The chapter contains several quotes that emphasize the importance of having financial intelligence and acquiring assets instead of liabilities. The first quote, "It's not how much money you make. It's how much money you keep," means that your income means nothing if you don't save any of it. Kiyosaki is referring to his philosophy of using extra income to buy income-producing assets. That way, when you encounter times of hardship, you can survive with the income that is generated from your assets, and you can actually keep the money you have been saving. The second quote, "Intelligence solves problems and produces money." Money without financial intelligence is money soon gone, means that hard work alone cannot solve all problems. Sometimes an actual solution is needed, and solutions require thinking. Making money requires thought or, as Kiyosaki says, intelligence. If you don't spend your money in a smart way that either produces more money or preserves the value of your money, you will just be spending your money until it is gone. The third quote, "If you are going to build the Empire State Building, the first thing you need to do is dig a deep hole and pour a strong foundation. If you are going to build a home in the suburbs, all you need to do is pour a 6-inch slab of concrete." Most people, in their drive to get rich, are trying to build an Empire State Building on a 6-inch slab. Means that most people do not have the financial knowledge or understanding that it takes to build wealth. Just like it takes a deep hole and a strong foundation to build a skyscraper, it takes financial intelligence and acquiring assets to build wealth. Chapter 4, Mind Your Own Business. Mind your own business initially appears to suggest that one should ignore other people and rumors and focus solely on oneself. However, in this chapter, Kiyosaki explains that having a business, in addition to a profession, is crucial for building wealth. This does not mean becoming a business owner, but rather being involved in income-producing activities outside of one's day job. Kiyosaki distinguishes between having a profession and having a business, and encourages people to focus on making money for themselves, rather than for their bosses, banks, or governments. Kiyosaki shares the story of the owner of McDonald's, who explained that he was not in the hamburger business, but in the real estate business. Kiyosaki asks readers to consider what their own business is and how they can make money outside of their day job. The following quotes from Chapter 3 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad are meant to be explored and not debated. 1. To become financially secure, a person needs to mind their own business. 2. The rich focus on their asset columns while everyone else focuses on their income statements. 3. Financial struggle is often directly the result of people working all their lives for someone else. Many people will simply have nothing at the end of their working days to show for their efforts. For one of the main reasons net worth is not accurate is simply because, the moment you begin selling your assets, you are taxed for any gains. 5. Once a dollar goes into your asset column, never let it come out. Think of it this way, once a dollar goes into your asset column, it becomes your employee. The best thing about money is that it works 24 hours a day and can work for generations. 6. An important distinction is that rich people buy luxuries last, while the poor and middle class tend to buy luxuries first. 7. The poor and middle class buy luxuries with their own sweat, blood, and children's inheritance. Chapter 5, The History of Taxes and the Power of Corporations lesson. The idea of taxing the rich was first proposed by the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau as a means of reducing inequality and promoting social welfare. However, over time, taxes were applied to everyone, including the poor and middle class. One reason for this shift was the growing power of corporations, which used their resources to lobby for tax breaks and exemptions, and to shift the tax burden onto the middle class. The complexity of the tax code has also made it difficult for ordinary people to comply with it, creating opportunities for tax avoidance and evasion that benefit the wealthy. In addition addition to these factors, the wealthy have greater political power than the poor and middle class, and they use this power to influence tax policy in their favor. This can be seen in the recent tax cuts for the wealthy passed by the Trump administration in 2017, which were heavily influenced by wealthy donors and lobbyists. The rich have a significant advantage over the poor and middle class due to their knowledge of the legal structure of corporations. The rich created the corporation as a means of limiting their risk to the assets of each voyage. By putting their money into a corporation to finance a voyage, they could limit their losses to the money invested for that particular voyage. The corporate structure sits outside an individual's personal income statement and balance sheet, giving the rich a vast advantage. The philosophy of capitalism makes more financial sense than socialism, as socialists ultimately penalize themselves due to their lack of financial education. The rich always find a way to outsmart the take from the rich crowd, which is why taxes were eventually levied on the middle class. The rich outsmarted the intellectuals solely because they understood the power of money, a subject not taught in schools. Once the take from the rich tax was passed, cash flowed into government coffers, initially making people happy. Money went to government workers in the form of jobs and pensions, and to the rich via their factories receiving government contracts. However, the fiscal management of that money became a problem. The government policy was to avoid excess money, and failure to spend allotted funding risked losing it in the next budget. Chapter 6. This chapter of the book contains several powerful quotes that provide insights into the mindset and strategies of wealthy people. In this presentation, we will explore the meaning of each quote and its implications for personal success. 1. Often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. This quote suggests that boldness is a more important trait than intelligence when it comes to achieving success. While intelligence is undoubtedly useful, it can be limiting if it leads to overthinking or hesitating to take action. Boldness, on the other hand, involves taking risks and seizing opportunities, even in the face of uncertainty or fear. To get ahead, it is essential to have the courage to act boldly and take risks. 2. As a teacher, I recognized that it was excessive fear and self-doubt that were the greatest detractors of personal genius. It broke my heart to see students know the answers, yet lack the courage to act on the answer. This quote highlights the importance of overcoming fear and self-doubt to unleash one's full potential. Many people know what they need to do to succeed, but they lack the confidence to take action. Fear and self-doubt can be paralyzing and prevent people from achieving their goals. To succeed, it is essential to confront these fears and develop the confidence to take action. 3. Old ideas are some people's biggest liability. It is a liability simply because they fail to realize that while that idea or way of doing something was an asset yesterday is gone. This quote emphasizes the importance of adapting to change and embracing new ideas. In today's fast-paced world, old ideas and ways of doing things may no longer be relevant or effective. It is essential to stay open to new ideas and be willing to change course if necessary. Holding on to outdated ideas or methods can be a liability that prevents growth and progress. For rich people are often creative and take calculated risks. Rich people often think outside the box and come up with creative solutions to problems. They also take calculated risks by carefully assessing the potential rewards and risks of an opportunity before investing in it. By taking calculated risks and being creative, rich people can often achieve financial success that others cannot. 5. Why would you want to increase your financial intelligence? Because you want to be the kind of person who creates your own luck. Increasing your financial intelligence can help you make better decisions about your money. By making smart financial decisions, you can create your own luck and increase your chances of achieving financial success. Financial intelligence can help you understand how to manage your money, invest wisely, and build wealth over time. 6. The single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If it is trained well, it can create enormous wealth seemingly instantaneously. An untrained mind can also create extreme poverty that can crush a family for generations. Your mind is the most powerful asset you have when it comes to building wealth. If you train your mind to think in a certain way, you can create wealth almost instantly. However, an untrained mind can also create poverty and financial hardship that can last for generations. 7. If the opportunity is too complex and I do not understand the investment, I don't do it. Simple math and common sense are all you need to do well financially. It is important to understand the investments you are making before putting your money into them. If an opportunity seems too complex or difficult to understand, it is often best to avoid it. Simple math and common sense are often enough to make good financial decisions. 8. The problem with secure investments is that they are often sanitized, that is, made so safe that the gains are less. Investments that are considered secure often have lower potential returns than riskier investments. These investments are often sanitized or made safer by limiting the potential rewards. While secure investments can be a good option for some investors, they may not be the best choice for those looking to maximize their returns. 9. It is not gambling if you know what you're doing. It is gambling if you're just throwing money into a deal and praying. Investing is not the same as gambling. If you understand the investment and have a plan for how to make money from it, it is not gambling. However, if you are just putting money into an investment without understanding it, it is similar to gambling and can be risky. 10. Great opportunities are not seen with your eyes. They are seen with your mind. The best investment opportunities are often not obvious at first glance. To identify these opportunities, you need to use your mind to analyze and evaluate potential investments. By doing so, you can identify opportunities that others may overlook. 11. It is what you know that is your greatest wealth. It is what you do not know that is your greatest risk. Knowledge is key when it comes to building wealth. What you know can help you make smart financial decisions and identify profitable investment opportunities. However, what you do not know can be your greatest risk, as it can lead you to make poor decisions or overlook important details. Chapter 7. Work to learn, don't work for money. In Lesson 6, Kiyosaki tells us he is shocked by how many talented people he meets that make so little money. One was his own very well-educated poor dad. Another is the author of a book, a story he tells us in Chapter 6. He suggested that if she wanted to sell more copies of her book, she should study sales. She was appalled. After all, she had a master's degree in English literature and she hated salespeople. She said to him, "Tell me why I should study sales?" He picked up a copy of one of her notepad where she had written Robert Kiyosaki, best-selling author. He asked her, "Do you see this?" He pointed at it again. It says best-selling author, not best-writing author. He told her that she is a great writer, but he is a terrible writer, but a great salesman, and that's why he sold so many more copies of his book. She was appalled and ended her interview with him. Kiyosaki gives us advice he once received from a consultant that most people are just one skill away from great wealth. He adds that most people need only to learn and master one more skill and their income would jump exponentially. What is one thing you really excel at right now? What one other skill could you acquire that would really help you take off in your career? And maybe in your piggy bank? Kiyosaki learned something else from his rich dad. You want to know a little about a lot. That is basically advice to be a generalist. When you know a lot about a little, you might have job security, but that job security will be for one thing. The more specialized you become, the more you are trapped and dependent on that speciality. Kiyosaki doesn't really have an opinion one way or the other about labor unions, but he said if you are a specialist, you better be sure that company you work for has a union, and a strong union at that. Because if that job goes away, like so many jobs are going away right now in our digital age, then you are going to be left with one skill that can only do a specific job. Most workers never get ahead, says Kiyosaki. They do what the VE been taught to do. Get a secure job. Most workers focus on working for pay and benefits that reward them in the short term, but are often disastrous in the long term. Instead, I recommend to young people to seek work for what they will learn, more than what they will earn, he says. Kiyosaki also likes to ask people, whatever work they are engaged in, where is this daily activity taking you? That's something we can each ask ourselves. What are we learning? What skills are we building? What assets are we acquiring in our mind and in our talents that can be useful over the long term and perhaps in our next steps? If the job you're doing is simply for pay, then he advises us to take a second job that will teach you a second skill even if the pay isn't great. After all, look at how much many of us will pay a college for a degree. Think of work as education. Sometimes I wish I would have thought about that rather than a college degree and all the time and money I spent on those degrees. Over time, I realized I have learned more on the job than I ever did in a classroom. And those experiences have made me more valuable to others. Education is more valuable than money in the long run. But remember, education isn't simply what's learned in a classroom or even in a book. The END